Poppy Playtime has always been one of my favourite mascot horror games. However, with some controversial moments within mob games over the years, the game always seemed like it would just be behind the likes of Bendy and FNAF in the leaderboard of best mascot horror games. In my opinion, they needed an entry that could show the world how scary this game actually can be and the potential actually being fulfilled, and so the world waited and waited until we got introduced to one specific character. The trailer of Chapter 3 genuinely sent shivers down my spine, and the excitement just grew within me for this game. The potential I saw in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 was actually looking like it was going to be fulfilled, and I couldn't explain my excitement of how much I was just so happy to see mob games going in a more horror route than the traditional colourful, kid-friendly mascot horror games. We were no longer in a colourful factory getting hunted down by Mommy Longlegs or Huggy Wuggy. We were laying deep beneath the surface in a darkness, but we were not alone down there, as we had multiple villains down there just lurking in the darkness, waiting to jump out at us. As soon as we opened Chapter 3, that sense of dread kicks in immediately. The music alone shows us how that game would genuinely just have us by the hook and just have us waiting for a jump scare to happen, keeping that tension high and ultimately creating an amazing horror experience. But ultimately, all these elements built up in hype towards Chapter 3, but ultimately, how did it deliver on these elements? And in my opinion, it created why Poppy's Playtime is the best mascot horror game of all time. As not only was the gameplay smooth, but my god, the graphics are actually amazing. The world building in this game is one of the best and honestly rivals Bendy for me. I think it definitely has one of the better world buildings out there in mascot horror, but the world building in this game, it has to be one of the best. Like, the way these areas come across to us are actually crazy, but they fit the game's overall story and lore. And with the play care, we are introduced to a bright, playful area. However, as soon as the lights go out, it all changes. The story of this game is dark and genuinely disturbing, as we learn what truly happened to the kids through VHS tapes that they were tested on, and this play care, this orphanage established to try and further these kids' potential and actually get them out into the real world, was just used to have test subjects at the company's fingertips. The story of this game genuinely shocked me. I cannot explain to you how much this actually shocked me as a mascot horror fan, because normally what we're used to in mascot horror is, yes, we will come across some disturbing elements in sort of, vague story patterns. For example, with the FNAF story, we have the mini games establishing kind of the lore of the story. We have in Bendy, we have audio logs establishing what's going on. But in Poppy's Playtime Chapter 3, from the opening, as soon as we find the first VHS tape, we're introduced to one of the best pieces of voice acting I've ever seen in mascot horror, as we hear this woman that she just wants to see her child again. However, this company is just not willing to let her near the child, considering she's seeing the nightmares of what's soon to be catnap.
Did Marie happen to describe what she saw? Yes, a monster, she said that it was colorless. Gosh, I could feel the poor little heart pounding. For her, it was right there. And her movements, they were so wild. Arms flailing, legs kicking. I wanted to talk to her, see how she's doing. I really need to hear her voice right now. That would not be advised, Miss Harp. She'll be okay. No! Well, pardon me if I'm not comforted by that. Just bring my little girl back to me.
But ultimately, how does this chapter prove it's the best mascot horror game, you may ask? Well, there's two specific moments that actually establish how good this game is. Overall, the game is amazing. Go play it for yourself if you haven't at this point. I don't know what to tell you. But to me, there's two specific moments in this game which really just stand out across the others, and it generally rivals the like of the Bite of 83 and FNAF. These two moments are so iconic in the mascot horror genre now, in my opinion, that they do rival those moments. For example, the end of Bendy and the Ink Machine, and ultimately the Bite of 83. I think that Poppy's Playtime Chapter 3 establishes that, okay, these are the key lore drops in Poppy's Playtime story. And we'll start off with the first one, as it genuinely is burned into my brain since the day I played it, and that is Dog Day. This scene established this game was going full mascot horror. None of this kiddie stuff, just pure horror. As we see this character of Dog Day, one of the last remaining smiling critters, how he's actually the last remaining one. What seems to be a more of a hopeful scene with him establishing that we can get out of here. However, it turns dark very, very quickly as we see millions and millions of these smiling critters enter Dog Day's half-splitted body and eat him from the inside out, as he then becomes controlled by these smiling critters, and ultimately we get probably the best chase in the game.
You and Poppy could fix this. End this madness. The torment. Oh no. Oh no. Leave me. Please. Just go. Run.
This scene is genuinely unbelievable to me. I cannot explain to you how scary this scene genuinely is, especially when you see it for the first time. Because with mascot horror, especially with Poppy's Playtime, there was definitely some elements of, okay, there will be blood and gore in this series. However, it wasn't really shown to us. But when we got kicked into Chapter 3, we definitely felt that there was more of a horror element throughout this game. Specifically that we were just waiting for what would actually happen, because there's a kind of a period in this game where you're just waiting for something to happen. We have some like lore drops where we have to collect some things and collect different items around the play care. However, once we eventually drop into the actual play care area, which is obviously this kind of like playpen surrounded by these smiling critters, we're kind of waiting for the ultimate horror drop to happen. And as soon as we come across Dog Day, we just have this sort of uneasy feeling about this scene of what could possibly go down. And ultimately, that's exactly what happens. As we see Dog Day drag his body with just his two arms and chase us through these pipes and slide systems, ultimately trying to get us. He is somewhat of a friendly character at first, but as soon as he's taken over by the smiling critters and Catnap, he changes instantly. But there's only one true moment in this game which establishes the best mascot horror game of all time, in my opinion. With FNAF, as I said, we have the Bite of 83, we have the so-called Bite of 87, which we're still waiting to see, and with Bendy we have the end of the game, and ultimately there's so many other mascot horror games. They have other scenes in them that will make you go, holy god, that was crazy. With Poppy's Playtime, this next scene is that moment, and that is the Hour of Joy. Over the time period of Poppy's Playtime's existence, we were kind of wondering what actually went down in this factory to ultimately lead to all this craziness. And as soon as we defeat Catnap in the boss fight, we just go into this room as Poppy is waiting for us with one final VHS tape titled The Hour of Joy. Now for me, a huge issue with the FNAF storyline, we haven't really been established to what goes down in the original restaurant. Obviously we have the Bite of 83, which seems to be kicking off most of the lore in FNAF. However, we still get hints nowadays to this Fall Fest, which actually happens in like the 70s. So to me, I definitely feel like the FNAF story kind of goes back on itself, considering how many entries in the game series we've had. But with Poppy's Playtime, we've only had 3 entries, and this third entry genuinely shows us what actually happened and ultimately the origin of what went down in the original factory, as we see Huggy Wuggy, Mommy Longlegs, Boxy Boo, Miss Delight and Catnap slaughter all the workers and all the people that lay in the factory in this one moment. We see the pure terror in this moment, and not only just that terror witnessing it, along with Poppy's narration shows the true horror laying within the walls of Playtime Co. And ultimately, this is the most horrific way to end a perfect horror game.